Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 2024 FIDE Candidates in Toronto, where 8 of the world's best players are fighting for the right to become the challenger for the World Championship. This round 7, marking the halfway stage, was dramatic. We saw 3 draws, all of them full of fight, some crazy opening ideas, some crazy tactics, but there was one decisive game, and that did feature one of the co-leaders going into the round. That was Gukesh with the black pieces, and he was facing Alireza Firouzja, who had, up to this point, been facing a tough tournament. Let's jump into that game to check out what happened. And it was the dreaded London system. You love it or hate it, but Firouzja going away from his normal opening repertoire here, maybe just trying to get a position, trying to get a game to force himself out of the tough form he'd had so far in the event. Gukesh clearly was prepared. And here we saw black very confidently play the variation with queen to b6, attacking the b2 pawn, utilizing the fact that the white dark squared bishop has already left its starting square. This vulnerable pawn was defended, but now white could never castle queenside, a fact that might become relevant a bit later on. And after a capture in the center, we do see a pawn structure that's known as the Carlsbad. This is when one side has pawns facing in this direction, the opponent has pawns facing the other way. In this position, in this type of structure, often black has one bad piece, and here it is the light squared bishop. This bishop is often stuck behind its pawn chain. It's often regarded as a big pawn itself, unable to participate, unable to get active, and hence Gukesh's next move. Gukesh here with black just trying to trade off his bad bishop for white's good bishop, also making it more difficult for white to castle on the king side. And here white played a very trendy move. Firouzja here embracing the art of Alpha Zero and pushing his pawn to h4. He realized, for example, trading bishops would not have helped him. Here it's impossible to castle through check, of course, so white's king stuck in the center anyway, might as well gain space on the flanks. Pawn to h4 masked a very creative idea involving a rook lift, rook to h3, preempting the fact that black might want to castle kingside himself later on, and we'll see this rook play a big role throughout the game. Here, black continued to develop. White pushed the pawn forward. Again, Alpha Zero, pushing the h-pawns forward, gaining space on the flanks, developing the rooks laterally. And, okay, after h6 preventing the advance, we saw pawn to a4 really forcing the issue, and white, because he'd moved both of his rooks, unable to castle, instead castles artificially, castles by hand, the white king sneaking over to safety nonetheless. And here Gukesh castled into the attack, a very brave move, and after a few moves of just maneuvering, knight to e5, it was Firouzja who really went for it now, forcing a trade of knights and going for the black king. This is a deadly pin. Black's king has to step out the way. Bishop takes h6 was threatened. So after king to h8, a5, the pawn on a4 was a bit vulnerable. Queen c7, we saw here Firouzja go for it. 2 pawns are attacked. He needed to take some action. e5 under threat, a5 under threat. He defended the more valuable of the two with his knight, knight to f3. And in this position, he faced a dilemma. Firouzja stuck true to his character, true to his nature, and he took a risk. However, he could, if he were in a more peaceful mood, have forced a draw instantly. A move such as bishop takes h6, queen d2 would have also worked immediately. This would have forced a draw by repetition. Attacking h6, the black king has to defend. A check now, forcing the black king back, and a bit of a dance between the queen and king. And this would have signed the score sheets with a draw, but he was rewarded later for his bravery. If we go back, queen takes a5. He chose a bit of a risky strategy, pawn to c4, a pin on the d file, meaning that the center is bound to be cracked open now. Rook to g8, prophylaxis here by Gukesh, just defending his kingside. G7 was a bit vulnerable. Now bishop takes h6 ideas no longer work. And rook to a1, objectively a mistake by Firouzja, but forcing the black queen away from the defense of this d pawn. And it is around the center that the next few moves revolve. Queen to b4. So many pins in this game. A pin along the 4th rank this time, also hitting the b pawn, pawn to b3. And although objectively black is in charge, in commentary we thought that here Gukesh was a big favorite to win the game. Things are still complicated. And despite Firouzja being low on time, the clock played a role for Gukesh as well. Knight into e4, black doing everything right, fending off the threats, driving away the attacking pieces. And here after rook to e3, queen to c5, a move I was praising in the commentary, rook to c1. And I feel like this is where Gukesh lost a bit of control. Black is a pawn up. Black has everything covered, but white has a sneaky threat, at least to complicate the issue. And black allowed this. Perhaps black should have been playing the move rook to c8 just to create tension along the c file, make it harder for white to open the center. Instead, the very natural rook to d8 allowed b4 by Firouzja, throwing another pawn off the board, forcing, though, black to lose a bit of coordination. The key is that you never want to take on d5 while black can take back with a piece. Queen takes d5 here, would control the knight, defend the knight on e4, and obviously, most likely, win material as well along the d file. Instead, pawn to b4 drives the queen away after the pawn was captured. Now c takes d5. And this structure, if black were to take back on d5, is less favorable. Yes, black is 2 pawns to the good, but the f5 is a nice, the f5 square is a nice launching pad for the white knight. The white rook would have access to the 7th rank, and this game could well have turned. Gukesh instead, just showing how impressively he's been playing throughout the candidates tournament, found a really nice shot. Knight takes f2, and the knight, which was attacked anyway, giving away its life for the highest price, forcing king takes f2, and now white is pinned all over the place. A pin on the d file, a pin on the 4th rank. How does Firouzja survive this position, you might ask? That is with really calm defense. Rook to e4, again, self-pinning. Really nice move there. Rook to d8. At least the computers here liking black's position by throwing the a pawn forward, but this is very hard for a human. It's very hard to resist going directly for the pin, for the material. White has to defend this knight with bishop e3, and now Gukesh, banking on his calculation that he made a bit earlier when he made that knight sacrifice, knight takes f2, played bishop to c5, and Firouzja here forced to find the only move, queen to b3. Again, not obvious at all, but he found it, of course, trading the queens and saving his extra knight. The problem is, after rook takes d4 here, white could sacrifice the queen. Rook takes d4, and despite the white queen dropping off, white would be left with 2 rooks and a bishop for Her Majesty. Mating threats as well. Probably this is a draw with best play. Black's queen, for example, can start giving some checks or maybe try to creep over at some point to win the h5 pawn to give the black king some breathing space. But Gukesh, I think, correctly chose the less risky option here. After queen to b3, he'd realized he's not winning on the spot, and so he transformed the position into a safe endgame, or so he thought. In this position, white has a knight for black's 3 pawns, but white's pieces are about to get active. Rook into c7 is a big threat. Gukesh just ignored this. Perhaps the most pragmatic move to play here would have been something along the lines of pawn to b6, just stopping the white knight from ever entering the action. The white knight is very poorly placed. Instead, though, going straight for his own play, ignoring counterplay, did come back to bite him. And in this position, suddenly the knight leaping forward, he had lost control. Both sides now down to just a couple of minutes. And I think Gukesh perhaps missing white's next brilliant move here. Pawn to b5 is perhaps best. He played rook a8 instead. Not a mistake, but knight to d7, echoing a great knight d7 find by Pragnananda the previous day. This has multiple purposes. Firstly, a fork threatened on b6, hitting both black rooks simultaneously. But the beauty behind this move is this variation. Pawn to a3, rook takes a3, sacrificing the rook. And if black does take, he is deflected away from the back rank where rook and knight combined, as well as this h-pawn. Watch out for this pawn playing a part. This delivers checkmate. The black king is caught in a net, a series of checks, and eventually the white rook closes the trap, closes the door, and checkmate. So a3, Gukesh's plan has been foiled, and here he panicked. He should perhaps have played a move such as b5. It turns out that knight to b6, yes, it's a fork, but this can be rebuffed by a check, and the black rook defending its counterpart here. The game would continue. Instead, he actually lost a valuable tempo. He played king to h7, hoping to push the black a pawn, but here, after Firouzja's rook to f3, it turns out the white combo of 2 rooks and a knight were just too difficult to stop. The black king stuck in a mating net with no defenders around it. Gukesh here, no time on the clock. He banked everything on his a-pawn, but ultimately, after rook takes f7, he realized his king is doomed. a2 here would lose to knight f6 check, and a simple rook takes pawn with a checkmate to follow. Instead, he pushed his king back first, and Firouzja, with only a few seconds left, found the main winning move, by far the strongest move, knight to f8. And unfortunately, nothing to do with black here. A2 was played, knight g6, and heartbreak for Gukesh. No matter where the black king goes, next move, rook takes g7, is checkmate. Turnaround, a dramatic game, so many tactics, both on the board and under the surface. Ultimately, Firouzja rewarded for his courage, but Gukesh, who was in the lead, now drops down, and heartbreak for the teenager. He will hope to bounce back from this devastating defeat in the second half. Watch out for that. But ultimately, a great game of chess, a great battle between two fantastic young gladiators.